And we continue our special 1-hour Newsmaker show today. In the first half hour, it was Congressman Tom Reed. In the second half hour, it's the usual guest, Alfred University political science professor emeritus, Dr. Robert A. Heineman.
Thank you, Brian. It's a little unusual for me to be following my students, but that's okay. I'm sure he's doing a fine job.
Let's start out with the primaries.
Well, yes, Brian, I think it's time we took a moment here, pause just a bit, to sort of remove some of the, I think, misperceptions that are occurring here in terms of the primaries for the Democrats, on the Democrat side, of course. And what's happening, I think, is that pundits are pushing this as kind of similar to a presidential race in which a person carries this state or a person carries that state and typically carry all the electoral votes. And that sort of thing is not happening in the Democrat primary here. So when you say, for example, that Biden is carrying this state, that doesn't mean that Biden gets by any means all of the delegates from that state. The real question out there, folks, is how many delegates are going which direction or that direction in the situation. And as you know, to go into the convention in Milwaukee this summer with a majority, you're going to need something over 1,900 delegates. And, of course, neither Biden nor Bernie is anywhere near that at this point. In fact,
yeah, I think it's Biden 867, Bernie Sanders 711 at the last count.
Yeah, and that maybe changed a little bit because yesterday California was clearly given to Bernie. And that means Bernie's going to pick up 40-some delegates over Biden there. And the figures I got here, and you're working from, I think, had him picking up 36. So he may pick up another 8 or 10 delegates there in California over Biden. So for Biden to win and really put Bernie in the dust, he's got to have turnouts like he had in, for example, South Carolina, which he carried. But still, Bernie still got 15 delegates out of South Carolina. So he pounded Bernie 39-15. In a place like Alabama, he got 44 delegates to Bernie's 8. And I think Virginia was a pretty good pounding, too, 66 Biden delegates, 31 for Bernie. But the point is, Texas, for example, which the pundits say Biden carries Texas, which with no question is a disappointment to Bernie, but the difference was 9 delegates. Biden got 111 delegates, Bernie got 102. So Biden gains 9 delegates on Bernie. And the point we're making here is that even if Biden wins a lot of these upcoming states, Bernie is still going to get delegates out of the state. So the idea that somehow Bernie is going to drop out of the primary, I think, is just totally illusory. And, of course, as you know, this week Bernie made it very plain that he wasn't going to drop out. So that if he continues to stay in the primaries, he will continue to pick up some delegates and make it harder and harder for Biden to end up with 1,900 and whatever he needs to have a majority. And the result will be that this will be tossed into a brokered convention, which is what the Biden people, I think, very desperately want to avoid. And
can you define a brokered convention for us?
Well, it means that nobody has a majority of the delegates, and so they have to negotiate among themselves and a third or fourth party to try to figure out who can pull in a majority of the delegates. For example, and this isn't exactly on target, but when Lincoln back in 1860, you may remember this vaguely, went into the convention in Chicago, William Seward from Auburn was the favorite, and Lincoln was way behind. But after I don't know how many different ballots, Lincoln began to pull ahead and finally won the nomination. Now, we're not going to have anything like that in Milwaukee, but the fact is, after the first ballot, then your 770 superdelegates then come into play. And I think the real question and the problem that the Biden people have, and is worrying them right now, and is going to, I think, worrying them a lot more by Milwaukee, is that Joe is not going to hold up here as a stellar candidate. And so Bernie right now, of course, wants to go into that debate Sunday night head-to-head with Biden and take him on these issues head-to-head. And I don't think Biden's people are eager at all to do that. And I would say this, just to confuse the issue a little more, that Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is unhappy that she's being left out of that debate because she considers herself still a candidate. I don't know if she has any delegates, to tell you the truth, but she's been in most of the primaries here or there. And if I were the Biden people, frankly, I'd let her in, because all she's going to do is confuse and befog the issues and throw a lot of smoke out there.
Did you say Chelsea Clinton?
No, did I say Chelsea? I said Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Am I with
Chelsea.
You here? Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard, okay.
Yeah, Chelsea can give Clinton maybe a backup choice there. But
I
think her mother is more interested in that than she is. But at any rate, so the point is Tulsi Gabbard, it seems to me, would confuse things a little bit and maybe give Joe Biden a little protection. Not that she is going to be very supportive of Biden, but still it might confuse some of the issues. So I don't know whether Tulsi will get in there or not, probably not, in which case Biden's going to have to go head-to-head with Bernie, and that could be pretty rough on Biden. So the point here is that Bernie is going to continue to amass delegates, maybe not as many as fast as Biden, but I don't think Biden he'll have enough that he'll be able really to prevent Biden from getting the majority. And the additional problem, of course, is that increasingly it's clear that Biden just can't handle it in head-to-head, off-the-cuff campaigning.
He used to be so sharp, too.
Well, he's just, and as you may know, Brent Hume on Fox, was it Tuesday night or Monday night?
Yeah.
Maybe it was Tuesday night. Made it very plain that, in his view, Biden is beginning to lose his memory, beginning to lose his ability to conceptualize coherent answers. And as we know, we all saw him take after that. Was it an auto worker in Michigan?
Or a construction guy or something, a gun owner. Owner out in the Midwest.
Started swearing and yelling at him. So what they're trying to do now, of course, is give him 10 or at most 15-minute little spiels, which he reads off pretty much, and then get him out of the range of any questions or anything of that sort. And so they'll try to keep some distance. And this whole virus thing might play to his advantage there. He could claim that we have to hold down the rallies, have to basically maintain some distance from the people and keep the crowds down. I can see them playing that a little bit, frankly. I don't know how long they'd be able to play that, but clearly that's another problem that the Biden people have, and another reason why they'd very much like Bernie to fold his tent and come into their camp. And as you know, this Tuesday, after Biden won and carried a good number of votes in Michigan, and I don't know how the delegate count came out there, but he went out of his way, basically kind of begging Bernie to say, well, now you put up a good fight. Now let's get together, etc. So
What do you think Bernie's point is? I've heard some talking heads say that Bernie's staying in a Pat Buchanan kind of way to influence the party.
Oh,
Bernie knows
absolutely.
he's not going to go anywhere.
Absolutely, he's definitely in there. He's, as he said before, his is a movement. It's a message he's carrying here, and he's going to carry that all the way to the convention. And he's going to insist that the Democrats move farther to the left than they would like to. And he's got the wherewithal to do that. And in that sense, I don't blame him at all for not dropping out. He's had people working very hard for him for a year or more. He's collected a lot of money. He himself has put in a lot of effort. And he clearly thinks, I think, that he's a better candidate than Biden. So why would you say, well, no, we're going to stop now? No. And my understanding was that was it yesterday or the day before, Carville was saying it's all over. No, I don't think so. It's not all over by a long way. So I think it's important for people to look at this in terms of how many delegates are coming out of each state. And even if Bernie loses a state in terms of the popular vote, in almost every case, he's going to continue to pick up delegates. So it's going to be tough to get him off the table here, so to speak. Now, also, it's kind of interesting to look at the other side on these primaries. And again, I don't have this past Tuesday's numbers. My numbers here are primarily from Super Tuesday and previously. But what's really kind of interesting, and has got to be a little frightening to the Democrats, is that Trump running in these same states is piling up huge percentages of the Republican vote. So then in Texas, he got 94% of the Republican vote. In Alabama, he got 96%. In Oklahoma, he got 92%. Arkansas, he got 97% of the Republican vote. Who else gets voted for? I'm not sure. Mitt Romney, Weld, or whatever. But and that's kind of interesting. But our listeners have to understand that really in these primaries where Trump's name's on the ballot, there really isn't any race to speak of. Whereas on the Democrat side, you've got Bernie and Biden going after each other tooth and nail, and so you would think the turnout would be quite a bit higher. But in terms of popular vote, for example, in Texas, Trump got 1,890,000 votes, and the Democrats got just barely over 2 million. So Trump carried almost as many Republican votes in the popular vote as the Democrats in their hard-fought primary were able to get total. And in Alabama, for example, Trump carried 695,000 votes, and the Democrats, between the two of them, the best they could do was 450,000 votes. So the point is, Trump is almost outpolling both Bernie and Biden with nobody running against him. In Oklahoma, 274,000 votes, and the Democrats total had 304,000. In Arkansas, let me give you the last. In Arkansas, the Republicans outpolled the Democrats in total, 238,000, and the best the Democrats could do was get 228,000. So the Republicans with no primary ended up polling 10,000 more than the Democrats could poll. So that's got to indicate, first of all, a lot of Republican support for Trump, and also that the Democrats could be in serious trouble in November. Anyway, yes.
I do have a question there. Can
Sure.
the Democrats win the White House? Can they win the Senate? Can they win the House of Representatives? And if they don't win any of those three, what happens to them next time around?
Well, that's very hard to say in the sense that Trump obviously can't run the next time around. So it would be a question of who are the candidates. Now that does raise another question here, which we haven't touched on, and that is if Biden is going to be the nominee or is seriously in contention for the nomination, then it becomes really essential to know who the VP nominee is going to be. And with a real concern about Biden's ability to handle things, the VP candidate is going to be very important. And that's, again, where we've said here, haven't we, Brian, that Governor Cuomo would be a real possibility there in that situation. But, of course, a lot of people think it has to be a woman, and that's where Hillary Clinton very clearly is putting herself forward, I think, at this point, to be that woman. So I know you're gulping there, Brian. I'm sorry.
I'm not Hillary phobic.
But I think
I can report on Hillary just the same as I can report on Andrew Cuomo or anyone else.
I see. Well, that's not good enough, Brian. They have cost her the last election. So who's going to step forward there? I don't know. And, of course, it depends on whether Biden ends up with a nomination. Again, they could pull up somebody like a Cuomo or I don't know who else you might pull
Would
up.
Andrew Yang be a possibility?
I suppose, yeah. He's pressed people as being a pretty bright fellow. And
that's what I was thinking.
Give everybody $1,000, and so it's pretty hard to pass that up.
I guess so.
But no, I mean any of these candidates that have dropped out or made motions towards running, it seems to me you could turn to them. I think it's kind of wide open right now, to tell you the truth. And it's really amazing because if you listen to the press, it's like it's all over, and I don't think that by any means.
And when you say that, how do you mean that they think it's all over? That they think Trump will win, Trump will lose?
No, they think Biden has got it locked up, and so that's. But I must say, when you got some of these major commentators and such saying, Joe seems to be losing his memory. He can't seem to recall things. And it's very clear that his handlers are really trying to keep him as far away from any kind of
impromptu situation.
Right, impromptu face-to-face situations. And you don't need to worry about Bernie. Bernie knows what he's standing for, and he can take you on head-to-head. So I would not be surprised if somehow the Biden people try to slip out of the Sunday debate, but we'll see.
Well, I hear that read that Hunter Biden did not show up for some hearing, one of his personal problem types hearings, because he said he was either suffering from or being tested for the coronavirus. So I don't know if that would be a possibility for Joe to say something like that.
Well,
I doubt it, though, come to think of it, because then he couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, no, what he would be concerned about is the audience, whatever, but I think they've already set it up so there won't be any audience to speak of in the debate. So
yeah,
so they don't have to handle it that way. Well, we'll just have to see. It's, as usual, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Yeah.
On the topic of Saudi Arabia and the Russians on the oil market, reading the headlines here from oilprice.com. Saudi Arabia strikes back at Russia in key oil market. From the Spectator, crude tactics. Russia and Saudi Arabia are at war over oil prices.
Yes. That's really quite interesting. Because obviously that's affecting the price at the gas pump these days. But what I think part of this is, and there are obviously several nuances to this, but part of this is, of course, the the Russians would very much like to destroy our oil shale business, which is enabling us to pump out oil in huge volumes at low prices and making, Russia's oil less competitive. So I think they think by lowering the price, they can make it tougher on our oil shale producers, and they may do that. But the problem there for them is that even though they may bankrupt some of our shale companies, those shale companies are the mining shale or drilling shale or however you get shale there is not going to go away. We've figured out how to do it. We've got huge fields of oil, so that some of these companies may get hurt by this, but they'll come back, or somebody will come back. So I don't think in terms of permanent sense, the Russians are going to be able to put that away. Now, on the other side of this, it does appear that it's the Saudis and the Crown Prince who started all this and just started to drop the price of oil, I guess to make life unpleasant for the Russians. But there's no way the Saudis can continue this. They are heavily dependent on oil exports, and at the price, and I don't know what they were talking, $20 or $30 a barrel. At that price, they can't continue. They can't produce at a profit, and so if they continue to dig into their monetary reserves, the pundits I've looked at feel that the best they can hang on there is for a couple of years. So I don't know what the Crown Prince thinks he's doing here, because the Russians, although it can hurt the Russians, they can go on for a long time at that low price because they have other products and they're producing other things besides oil. Although oil is, I think, something like a third of their exports, but still, they've got other exports they can turn to. So I don't know, and I don't know if the Russians are trying to back the Iranians here to embarrass the Saudis, or the Saudis thought they could make life difficult for the Russians and the Iranians. I'm not sure, but it's pretty fascinating, and you notice who's not really involved in this, right, Brian?
President Donald J. Trump?
Right. We're just standing by watching this, yeah.
Interesting observation.
Well, we try to keep a certain amount of interest here, yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping in this week, Doc.
Yes, try to have something really exciting next time, Brian.